Well, Uganda is beautiful. I can tell you, it's one place that I feel like everyone should visit because there is a lot. There is a lot. They call it the Pearl of Africa for a reason. You have beautiful River Nile, of course. The nature around it's beautiful.
Amos Madra.
Mollen, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you very much for joining us here today. So, broadcaster, journalist, and environmentalist. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for having me. Well, I am a weather presenter turned climate change communicator, and I work with a national broadcaster, which is Uganda National Meteorological Authority. And for me, it has been a transition of being not being just a journalist, but also being able to go deep down and tackle issues of climate change and environmental issues, which I find it's in today, the challenge that we have with climate change, quite relevant. And that is where like my career right now has been focused on.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about climate change. We think about what's happening in South Africa with the floods. It's something that is really relevant, and it's an issue in our day that we need to deal with.
Yes, because we have had more of those events, just the floods and landslides in South Africa. But also, I think what has been mostly on the African continent is the frequency of the tropical cyclones that have hit Madagascar and coastal area of South Africa at that point. And at least for the first 3 months of this year, we saw about 5 storms hitting Madagascar and also continuing to, parts of Malawi. And those areas have been worst hit by the extremes of climate change. So we have been facing a lot across Africa, and also not to mention the droughts that we've been having. For us here in East Africa, it has been usually drier areas, especially like the northern parts of Uganda, but also parts of Somalia and Ethiopia that have had drought cases, but we're seeing the frequency at which that is happening quite going up. And even for Uganda here, we've had mostly dating back from 12 years, that is 2010, when we had devastating landslides for eastern Uganda. We have seen more of those happening, which is what is bringing in the issue of most of that being related to climate change.
Absolutely. And what do you think governments should be doing? Should the message be loud and clear? Governments have to take action, businesses, of course, individuals as well, the public.
Yeah, I find because obviously we have had environmental talks and climate change communication right from even government level to international level, where we have seen most countries being party to, for example, the UNFCCC, that is the Framework Convention on Climate Change. However, whenever we have all these, parties, it's like, it's just a political agenda. They have not recognized that climate change should be on the political agenda. So even when we talk about all these policies, we just came out of Glasgow and, we came out with the Glasgow Pact, but the implementation on ground is not there. So I think that as governments, they should be looking at the reality of climate change, looking at the reality of what is happening in terms of extreme weather events, and then implement what is being put on paper. Because yes, like most of the developing countries, Africa per se, we know that the contribution towards climate change is just a small percentage. We are not contributing to the problem. However, we are suffering most in terms of impacts. And our governments right now should be concentrating on adaptation. However, you cannot adapt to death. You cannot adapt to destruction. Because right now we know that in South Africa, already that death toll rose to, that was, I think, 340 something. And that is not adaptable. People are dying. So I think they should be listening more to what the scientists are saying, what the scientific reports that are coming out are saying, like the recent IPCC, which clearly stated the problem at hand, and like do the needful, act, instead of keeping being party to these conferences, and then the implementation on the ground is not there.
Yeah,
Yes.
Absolutely. It's so important. And I think that needs to be heard loud and clear. Internationally, more needs to be done. It's one thing for, these governments to come together with businesses and meet, but what does it actually mean? Where does it lead to? And as you said, the frequencies are increasing, whether it's droughts, floodings, and the countries, I suppose, who are the biggest polluters are not doing, the West perhaps, China perhaps, maybe they could contribute a bit more towards continents like Africa and play their part as well.
Yes, because it's interesting. You actually bring out a good point. Like if you look at the big polluter, China is of course on top of that list, but you also have countries that have made commitments to put a fund for developing countries to help them with the issue of climate change. However, I will tell you the reality is USA did pledge to support Africa in terms of fighting climate change. And right now, if you look at what is at hand, just recently, they approved billions and billions of money to support a war in Ukraine. But then at the beginning of the year, they only approved $1 billion towards the fund that was supposed to help with climate change in Africa, on grounds that the money was not enough. They don't have enough money. But just when there is war, they pull all these huge amounts towards that. So I think the money is there. Just the willingness to look at the issue of climate change is just not there. And this is where you find that Africa has been most vulnerable. If I'm to talk for my country, Uganda, there has been a lot that is hanging on. Well, so we have had mostly funding that comes through the Green Fund, the climate finance, and most of that usually goes for relief. But then again, if you look at a country that is majorly depending on agriculture, which is our biggest economy, 90% of the country's dependence is on agriculture. And this is the sector that has been most hit by climate change. Right now, we are in the middle of a rainy season. And I can tell you, we have had 3 consecutive seasons that are failing in terms of rains. So our produce is no longer enough. Our farms are just drying up because there are no rains. Even when the rains come, they are so stormy that they get all the plantations down. Not to mention that just recently, last year, we were hit by locusts across East Africa, and those also took a toll on agriculture. So we are getting to a level where this is getting worse, and governments would rather invest money in campaigns and looking for political status instead of the first problem that is affecting the country. Because even when you have agriculture produce going down because of climate change and variations in weather, then you have the fact that even at a level where extreme weather events come in, then you have landslides, then you have flooding, even across plantations. So that is also adding to the problem that is there. We might be looking at the next 5 years of, having less rains, more drought issues. And that can only be catastrophic, I can tell you that.
Absolutely. A very stark warning there. Yeah. So let's go back to your career, starting out as a journalist. Talk to us about, how you got into this whole journalism career.
Well, I actually didn't start out like a professional journalist. I didn't study journalism and all. But my first instinct, even in doing weather, because I started up by studying meteorology, which at that point was at a diploma level. I got my diploma in meteorology. But then again, I was always, into production, movie production, local movies. So I had friends I was partnering with. We started TV series on one of the TVs in the country, national TV. It's called TV West. And we were producing some comedy series. And so that's how I got involved in being in the media. And so at one point, I remember the producer I was with, he kept telling me, Mollen, you could actually be in front of the camera instead of being behind the camera. I'm like, no, but I am more of a practical person. I want to be behind the camera. But then he kept encouraging me. So one time we were supposed to shoot an episode and one of our lead actresses was not around. So he tells me, you know what, I think you can come in. We don't have an option. I felt like maybe he initiated that and maybe told her not to be around. But then again, I got into that and that's how I started being in front of the camera, and I found myself even liking it. But then again, later, even after the TV series, there was a training from the World Meteorological Organization on turning meteorologists into weather presenters. And so I had that experience. So everyone was pointing at me. They're like, no, this person has been on TV, so she can actually translate the science into the language that the public would understand, being the fact that she has been in the media. And that's how it all started. So when I started presenting weather, I'm like, no, it's not enough to talk about it's going to rain, it's going to shine tomorrow. How about if it doesn't rain, why is it not raining? So that's how I got interested in diving more into climate change communication.
Yeah, and obviously now on the flagship program, on the breakfast program as well, waking up the whole of Uganda.
Yes, so it's interesting actually, because when I started working with UBC, it was just the weather forecasts and climate change videos here and there. But then they also noticed that I could do more. And the deputy managing director currently, Maurice Mugisha, he did also bring out the idea of us doing just a segment about climate change. But then also as I got onto the morning show, the producer of the morning show was more like, I think you can do more, still do weather and climate, but at the same time, be able to do other segments, come in, have a voice in all these segments that go on across TV. And so I ended up just being also a co-host to that morning show.
And it's worked out really nicely. It's a nice mix, isn't it, with your co-host as well?
Yeah, it's a dynamic situation. We all work together. They understand that I am the weather person, the scientist. So
but you offer your opinions as well on other subjects.
Yeah. So I do, talk in that regard, but at the same time, also there are political shows, things that really concern the country, international issues. So I get to, have my voice there, or even host, some of the guests that we have on the show. So I'm just, not one person who just settles for one thing and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do the other. So I'm just, dynamic in that kind of issue.
Talk to us, life as a working mother. Balancing work-life balance.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting because most of the times it's not like you're there 100%, but it's also takes in the issue of having most of the kids in schools, boarding schools. You not only see them in holidays, and sometimes you feel like, okay, you're not giving them all the attention that they need as, a parent, a guardian, because I also have a lot of kids in the family that do depend on me. But at the same time, you feel like there is not enough time for them. But again, they know what I do. They are aware that even what I do is equally important. And yeah, there is struggle there, but I can handle.
And what's really, really important and really good is the culture is changing so much, just not just in Africa, but internationally. You know, women taking the lead role, going out there and also being breadwinners
Yes, yes.
and
Yeah,
getting
it has
balance.
definitely changed. It has definitely changed. And we even have here workplaces that have brought in nursery rooms. If you're breastfeeding or having a little baby, you can easily have them at work. Maybe have the help there, but at least they are close to you so you can easily work. So I think that's something that is progressive, but also gone are the days where women just had to sit home and nurture and just be mothers. Now we have to do both.
Yeah.
Work, but at the same time be a mother.
And do you feel the pressure of being a mother and, you know, again, being in the excuse me, in the employment sector as well? Or, you know, do you take it all in your own stride?
I don't think the pressure is there. The pressure is like not there, but I think maybe sometimes when the kids are dragged into, for example, like for us who are in the media, sometimes they feel like they're taking part of your fame, even in their schools. So it's kind of like kind of negative side for them, but you have to like constantly talk to them and tell them, you know what, this is okay, because they'll feel like they're getting the attention and not necessarily in a positive way sometimes. So I think that is where my pressure would be. But in terms of employment, I think it has not been an issue. Most of us are parents, so I don't think it's it's a lot there. No.
And that's the beauty of living in a beautiful country like Uganda, you know, the
Yes,
great
yes.
outdoors, you enjoy life, and, you know, talk to us about that.
Well, Uganda is beautiful. I can tell you, it's one place that I feel like everyone should visit because there is a lot. There is a lot. They call it the Pearl of Africa for a reason. You have the beautiful River Nile, of course. The nature around, it's beautiful. And yeah, I feel like there's not a lot really, especially in terms of you know, how secure the country is. The economy, yes, it's kind of a struggle, but then you're in a country where uh, everyone has kind of known a way to live. You get to work for what you earn. There is nothing free in the country, even then. But I think comparable. Well, I can tell you one thing. Living in Uganda is actually nice. With everything going on, like I'm mentioning about, you know, climate change hitting people hard, agriculture struggling, but at least they're beautiful in the country. And if anyone is heading for Uganda, I can tell you there's a lot to unpack. And yeah, just from the nature, we are very well endowed with, you know, the national parks, River Nile, famous one, and Lake Victoria. There is a lot. So it's a beautiful country. I can tell you that for sure. Yes.
Fantastic. Mollen, before I let you go, can you tell us what the plans are for the future? How can people connect with you as well?
Well, myself, I think I am not one person who lays out like resolutions, how people call them. However, I do have a plan to at least make sure that we're able to get more journalists into talking about climate change, because over time we have seen that mostly weather presenters are looked at as people who just tell the weather. These scientists who are already serious, but at the same time you have journalists who are more connected to the public. They already have a name, they are famous across the country. So I have been engaging with most of the journalists to make sure that at least we do you know, trainings once in a while to make sure that most of them are getting involved in climate change. because I believe that the goal is to have the public aware of what is happening around them. And if you have a voice in a country that is, you know, be it a comedian, being a politician who is more involved with people, those are the people that you target to deliver the message. So I have had an initiative to get more journalists on board with environmental communication and talking about climate change. And so far, I'm just like in the primary, you know, just preparations, but at least I've engaged with most of them, at least about 5 big names in the country. And if we can form up something and get more journalists involved in talking about climate change, then we can drive the message home so that people are able to understand that whatever is happening around them is not just natural. It is something that we have caused, and we're able to do something about it, especially in terms of finding solutions. Yes.
Absolutely. And how can the audience connect with you? Are you on social media? Are you on
yes. So I am on social media. I use my Twitter handle most, and that is at Mollen Weather. But I'm also on Instagram at Mollen Kenyena. Well, I want to appreciate you for the time. I'm really glad to be here, and you'll be able to share with you, stories from Uganda, and obviously the topic that I'm more passionate about, that is climate change, but also something that is not just regional, like everyone else in the world is dealing with it. And it's like the pandemic that is far away from us, yet in reality is we're already in the pandemic, looking at what the extremes have been. But again, people respond mostly to what is, in papers all the time, what everyone is focusing on at that level. But I guess that, my message, even as I end this, is we should look at the reality of what is happening right in front of us and not ignore what the science is telling us. This affects everyone, because people that are dying from these events are people that, are close to us. And it's until it hits you. If you remember, even with COVID, people were skeptic at first. Like in my country, people were skeptic. They're like, no, this COVID thing is probably not there, until they started losing relatives. That's when they were like, okay, this is COVID. Everyone started wearing their mask and being serious. So I think that's the same that is happening with climate change. Until it hits your country or hits bad in your area, that's when people start to realize the reality. But I think we shouldn't be waiting for that to happen. We should be more vigilant and, active in terms of fostering change when it comes to climate action.
Wow, Mollen, thank you so much. You're an absolute star. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, and I hope we can have you back again soon. Thank you. If you want some amazing inspiration, check out the videos next to me, and I'll see you right there.